Okay, everybody, let's get started this morning. We'll dispense with roll call again. We've got four of us here, and that's enough. Welcome everybody to Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife. This morning, we're kind of a hodgepodge committee this morning, but we do have one travel and recreation bill representative. Good morning, Senator Representative. Good to see you. And we're waiting on one senator, but we're going to get started anyway. Representative Fremont County crew, take us into House Bill 299. Representative, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, or as we say in Shoshone, Zontbeichu. Good morning. We're here this morning, my fellow representative, to discuss House Bill 299 regards online sports wagering amendments regarding each and Shoshone Northern Arapaho tribe, and it's to conduct online sports wagering. Obviously, there's been support from both councils, their gaming commissions, and it went through the House side. Basically, what it does, it has some procedures there that'll be promulgated by the Gaming Commission if it passes out of this House or out of this chamber and out of the and becomes law. Online gaming is a big thing, as we all know. DraftKings and some of those other online sporting type of processes that's already happened. The Wind River tribes are not included in that in terms of the Wyoming portion of it. There's a little difference between both tribes because the Northern Arapaho tribe self-regulates their own gaming procedures through the Department of Interior. The Shoshone tribe has had a gaming compact with the state of Wyoming since 2006, May of 2006. So this will just allow them within certain parameters to be able to offer them. I met with the head gaming, the director of the Gaming Commission here, and obviously there's a lot of betting that goes on now. He's got and my fellow representative here will probably talk about that a little bit more, but you could see where all the bets are happening as they in real time on his computer and his map. So I think that's basically it. Obviously, there's geographical limitations with the reservation. You know, there's no online sports betting. There's a little bit that the Arapaho has, but that's what we're here to discuss this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good deal. So Representative, you want to walk us quickly through the bill and let us know what the bill does?
Yes, I'll go ahead and start with the act relating to gaming, authorizing Wyoming tribes to conduct online sports wagering as specified, amending geolocation system requirements and providing for an effective date. It goes on and mentions the Wyoming statutes that'll fall under. And also it identifies the qualified gaming entity that offers online sports wagering through computers, digital platforms, or mobile applications in not less than 3 jurisdictions in the United States pursuant to a state regulatory structure. This is where it includes both tribes on lines 10 through 15. And the regulations that the commission shall promulgate rules to implement this chapter. The rules the commission promulgates shall establish standards and procedures for the online sports wagering and associated sports wagering systems. And the rules shall include, it talks about the rules. And I think the key here is the requirement for each sports wagering operator to use geolocation system to ensure all of the following. And that a patron makes the online sports wagers physically present in the state when making the wager unless otherwise authorized by the commission. All online sports wagering transactions shall be initiated and received or otherwise made by a patron who is physically located within the state, excluding patrons physically located on Indian lands as defined by 25 U.S.C. Subsection section 2703.4, and it would be effective this July 1st of this year. I'll turn it over to my fellow representative if you have no more questions.
Any questions for the bringer of the bill? Senator Schuler.
Mr. Chairman, so I think I understand this, but I'm not completely sure. So anyone that's in Wyoming can go ahead and do sports betting if this passes. However, if they're on the reservation, they cannot? Or is it just the folks from the tribes that cannot do the online? I wasn't I was a little unsure on page 3 what that meant.
Okay, Representative, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Schuler, there would be, if they were on the reservation, they could do sports betting. And that's where the geolocation would fall into play there. And I know my fellow representative has been involved in the interim of this, and he could probably explain that a little bit better if that's okay.
Sure. Good morning, Representative Larson. So let's have any other questions for Representative Posey first.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman, so the way I read the bill, the question is I see it now excludes the Indian lands as defined in 25 USC, but isn't there currently online sports wagering on the reservation?
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, yes, there is to some extent with sports gaming and with the Northern Arapaho tribe. And as I mentioned earlier, they do self-regulate. The Eastern Shoshone tribe has a compact with the state of Wyoming. So there is some, a little sports betting that happens with the Northern Arapaho tribe.
All right, thank you.
Representative Larson, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill goes back probably 3 years to when online sports betting, we were trying to get a hold of that on the state, you'll recall. And in that process, your good colleague from Natrona County that was the brains of our gaming stuff, Chairman Landon, kind of worked on this. And we attempted at that time to include the tribes, tried to figure out how they could be a qualified gaming entity, and that got tangled up in the House, and so they were omitted from the bill. And so this year, when we had the gaming work groups, last year, Management Council put gaming into the Appropriations Committee, and one of the things they wanted us to do is to look at all of these. We had a gaming work group, and we looked, and this was a component of that conversation. So if I may, I'd like to just lay the foundation because it really can get confusing. Okay, so the Northern Arapaho tribe has the right to game through the Federal Indian Gaming Commission, and you'll see that referenced here as the Secretarial Procedures through the Secretary of Interior. Later, when the Shoshone tribe entered into a gaming compact, that was with the state of Wyoming. Okay, so that's two tribes, two different authorities. Then we have the state, the Gaming Commission, Mr. Larenby back here. And so in this online sports gaming, we're trying to navigate all the requirements and all the jurisdictions necessary to allow the tribes to participate on online sports betting. Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks, the Northern Arapaho tribe currently has sports betting at their casino, no online. There's no online sports gaming taking place because we don't have anything in place to do that. So what we're going to ask this committee to consider an amendment, and I'll kind of go through this because as we brought this language to you from the House side, when we passed that through the House side, and the new language found on page 3 was an amendment that I brought that after it was done in visiting with our gaming commissioner and with the tribes, they says, thanks, Lloyd, but you kind of messed this up. Okay? Nice try. And then part of it's already governed by our state gaming commission, and we'll do away with that. So let me explain to you what we're trying to do is when we set up the online sports betting, and we were trying to determine what a qualified gaming entity was, we wanted them to be somebody who had experience in 3 different jurisdictions, 3 different states. And we were trying to do that, you'll recall, to make sure that they weren't some fly-by-night entity coming into the state. Our tribes don't work in 3 different entities. And then the other part of that is in our statutes. It says that online sports wagering shall not include or be conducted from a physical location created by a sports wagering operator or vendor, which the 2 tribes have. So we've got the jurisdiction problem and we got a physical location problem. That's two of the 3 things we're trying to clear up here. Then, when we talk about online sports betting, as we do, we talk about this geolocating so that if you're Lloyd's sports betting in Wyoming, those bets are geolocated. They have to come from within the state of Wyoming through me, a licensed vendor through the State Gaming Commission. It excludes the Wind River Reservation because of that jurisdictional thing. Okay? Now, tribes, if we get the jurisdictional thing taken care of, they could be an online sports gaming entity and vendor and operator through the Gaming Commission. It would be because it's outside their jurisdiction. So they would have to be qualified through the Gaming Commission, and all of their bets would have to come in from within the boundaries of the state. If they want to do online sports betting and take those bets from within the jurisdiction of the reservation, they've also got to update their requirements with their respective authorities. So to be an online sports wagering vendor, they'll be able to take them from around the state through the Gaming Commission and from within the reservation via their compact. So you can kind of see the tangles out there. The amendment, the proposed amendment that I have in front of you will, as we worked with the Gaming Commission, the tribal attorneys, will do that. And so, Mr. Chairman, if maybe to this point, I would be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if I've laid that out where you can kind of see the different jurisdictions and how we're trying to conform to where they can operate through those various jurisdictions.
I think you did great, Representative, but it's a pretty complicated issue. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it is complicated, and it's even more complicated for those who are technology impaired. And so you're going to have to back me up just a little bit more. So my understanding of online sports wagering, I don't have to be in a physical location. As long as I've got Wi-Fi connection and my phone, I can place an online wager. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Yes,
Representative.
yes, with a caveat, but you've got to be within the boundaries of the state.
Okay, so
Now-
in the boundaries of the state. So-
Within the boundaries of the state, and I think maybe where I confused you on the online, the physical online presence is for the vendor and the operator, not the customer.
So, Mr. Chairman, to follow up with that, so if the tribes are a licensed vendor and I'm using their platform, regardless of where I'm at in the state, I could still place a wager and it would go back because ultimately this comes back to the revenues that the 10% that we keep on the handle side and redistribute within the state. Is that the way that works? So it's got to be within the state, but the way this would work, if the tribes were a vendor, even if somebody was someplace else in the state, those receipts would go back to that vendor. That's correct? All right, I'm starting to understand.
So,
But-
go ahead,
but-
Representative.
But there is yet a little gap that you're getting there, so they're operating from their place on the reservation, and they're operating and getting those bets from around the state outside of the reservation through the authority of the State Gaming Commission and that license and that fees that apply there. But if they want to take those online sports wagering, same vendor, but there has to be a second license granted to receive those bets from within the reservation by virtue of the compact they respectively have to game.
So follow up on
Go
that,
ahead,
Mr.
Senator.
Chairman. So under those arrangements, the way, and I'm gonna get to the revenue side of it. So currently, the revenue side's at 90% goes back to the vendor, right? Are we anticipating that would be this, now, under our current situation, that 10% resides with the state, 90% goes back to the vendor. So what would be the arrangement under this with the tribes associated with the revenue distribution? 10% goes to the tribes, 90% or 90% goes to the tribes for the vendor. Where's the other 10% go? Or where are we with that discussion?
ahead.
Mr. Chairman, so you're absolutely right for all those wagers that come from outside the state through the State Gaming Commission license. For those that take place within their compact and are generated from within the reservation, I don't know what that split would be, if it's 90-10, 98-2, that would probably be a better question maybe for the tribes, but because that negotiation, I don't believe has happened yet, that's something, but the lion's share would go to the tribes. How much would go back to their respective agencies? And I think the best one to consider that would impact us is the one that the Eastern Shoshone has through Wyoming State Gaming Compact. The state would get a portion of that. If that's 10%, I don't know the answer to that.
So, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman,
Senator.
when would that come in? I mean, it seems to me like if we're going to go ahead and allow the tribes to set this up, that ought to be part of the discussion, because that's currently what we do with the other licensed vendors and places that down in Lost Wages have that arrangement in place to allow them to do the online sports wagering.
So Representative, the bill says that the agency will promulgate rules, and I assume that'll be the next step, but is that the way you read it too?
Mr. Chairman, yes, but I think that there is a little bit of qualifier because we don't legislatively get to determine what the breakout is on the gaming within the compacts on the reservation. We do legislatively get to do that generated from around the rest of the state. And so, further questions on what that percentage currently is now could be answered by them. But I think this bill really is trying to set up the framework to allow them to do it. And within that framework, we have specific guidelines for revenues generated outside their reservation territory from the rest of the state, which is that 90-10 break that's licensed through the
So
commission.
Representative, we'll get to the direct in a little bit, but Representative Posey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know through the current compact, there is no revenue sharing with the state. Like I said, the representative, my fellow representative mentioned earlier about the Gaming Commission promulgating those rules, and I'm sure that will come. I know through the National Indian Gaming Act, tribes have to, in terms of the revenue that they would get, they have to follow a allocation revenue plan. Say just for, and I'm not saying this is but it's maybe 10% goes to education, 20% goes to elderly health care or whatever, but it's up to them how they deal with the revenues. But I know when we signed the compact with the state of Wyoming, there's no revenue sharing. And Northern Arapaho self-regulates, the only tribe in the country that self-regulates their gaming operations.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Representative Larson.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may tie one more end that I have dangling out there just a little bit.
Yeah,
So-
let's tie up your end there. That'd be good.
So, and so we note that in our existing statutes for vendors to be an online sports betting, they can't have physical presence in Wyoming. And so if you read that new language on the amendment, we note that notwithstanding on each one of these tribes that allows them, because they do have a physical presence in the state. And so that would be an exclusion for them to be a qualified gaming entity and have presence in the state. And you'll note, Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks, at the bottom of that amendment, when we go into 924-103, where we talk about the license and fees, the new language there is that the tribes, both similar language, that they would be able to have a license, provided the tribes paid all the required fees under subsection E. So that's getting out of their compact and coming into the state jurisdiction under the Gaming Commission to do online sports betting outside the reservation.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, just probably for my edification more than anything else, what was the reasoning that the two tribes have the different compacts? One self-regulates, one has the compact. Did one of them get into the gaming business a little sooner than the other? And is that why that happened? Just a little history on that.
Representative Posey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler. Back in 2005, the early 2000s, the state of Wyoming went to court with the Northern Arapaho tribe. It was found that the state of Wyoming didn't act in good faith. So the federal system allowed the Northern Arapaho tribe through the court system to self-regulate their own gaming. So that's how they became to self-regulate, and they're the only tribe in the whole country. When Governor Freudenthal was our chief executive, we met with him when I was still with the tribe then, and we decided to do a compact in 2006. The reasoning was basically not to go to court and spend a bunch of money and have the same result. So that's the reasons. The difference is the Northern Arapaho got to self-regulate in 2005. The Shoshone tribe signed a compact in May of 2006 with the state of Wyoming. So that's kind of the brief story behind that.
Okay, thank you. Representative Larson.
So they self-regulate, but it's under the Federal Gaming Commission.
Yes.
It's under a federal entity. Geringer years trying to prevent the expansion of gaming, wouldn't let them be part of the state compact. Each state has the ability to do that. Supreme Court ruled in the tribe's favor. They went the other way. A few years later is when were you chairman at the time? When he was chairman of the Shoshone tribe, entered into the state compact. That's why the two.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for the two Fremont County representatives? Representative Larson.
Gotta say this, Zambechu.
Yeah, there we go.
I wrote it down.
Nicely done. I've learned something this morning, as I always do. Gentlemen, if you can stick around, that'd be great. We'd like to get to the agency director here real quick. Okay, thank you for being here. Representative, you can sit back and relax for a minute, and we'll take some testimony from other folks. Director, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Landon.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about this online wagering.
Certainly. So
Part of
I'm
the
going to try
world.
to make it even more simple.
Yeah.
So in 2021, when online sports wagering was authorized, it carved out the tribes. The statute says that you have to be licensed in 3 jurisdictions to participate. What this bill ultimately does would allow the tribes, if they so choose, to apply with the State Gaming Commission to offer online sports wagering off of the reservation. So to Senator Hicks's question, I know this is kind of hard to see, but I don't know if you can see that a little bit. This is a map, this is actually a live map right now of online sports wagering taking place in Wyoming. The red area that you see, that is all the reservation land. Any wager that takes place on that land would fall under their compacts that's completely outside of the state's gaming commission's purview. Any wager that takes place outside of that, the red area, would fall under the state's purview and it would be taxed just like all of the other operators are taxed. So any wager placed outside of that would fall under the current rules that we have already promulgated, and they would abide by those rules off of the reservation. I hope that helps.
So when I see those little dots showing up on the map, that's somebody placing a wager
Real time, right now.
live.
Right, live right now. Yep. The white ones are iPhones, the green ones are Samsung, the blue ones are computers. And I don't know if you see any red ones. You might see red ones. If it's red ones, it's because the system is notified, or it is determined that something is amiss. Either they're using some sort of a VPN to try to spoof a location, or they are within the tribal lands, and that's not allowed.
Thank you for that, Director. That, Senator Hicks. Yeah. 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 Well, that's fascinating. So Director, the piece that I'm having trouble catching up with is, so we license our tribes to be able to do this. Would that be the equivalent then of an online company? I'll just use DraftKings as an example. Would that be the same thing and our folks in Wyoming could choose to go through that platform versus some other platform? Is that?
Chairman Landon, that is correct. Yep, they would create their own online sports book, and then a consumer could join their sports book and use their sports book and
Gotcha.
instead of, or in addition to other sports books.
Okay, that makes sense. Senator Hicks.
Chairman, so Director, under your rulemaking authority, and I'm gonna come back to this, currently the distribution is 90% goes to the vendor, 10% of these online sports wagering come back to the state. And that conversation with Representative Posey, do you have the ability under your rules to negotiate that, or does that have to be a statutory component? This is what we do with all the other online sports vending entities, is 10% of that wager comes back to the state of Wyoming.
Chairman Landon, Senator Hicks, so any wager that's placed offside or off of the reservation lands would fall under that
I'm aware of
structure.
that. I'm saying if we pass this bill and give them licensing, and you guys grant the license, the fees, the registration fees to license themselves, do your rules allow you to negotiate on behalf of the state, a portion of that to come back to the state?
They would fall under the 10% tax structure as the law is written. We
So they
wouldn't
would-
be able to write it into rule to change the amount of distributions.
So there.
Go ahead,
just-
Senator Hicks.
I want to make,
Yeah.
I think I heard exactly what you said. Yes, that they would be subject to the 10%.
Chairman Landon, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Let's just know.
Now, the piece, Director, that would not fall under is any bets on the reservation, right? That piece is carved out.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We have no oversight of any wagers that take place on the reservation. That is between their compacts or with
That goes to
the
the
Indian
tribe.
Gaming Regulatory Act.
Okay, good deal. Director, continue. Anything else on the bill that you'd like for us to know that would be helpful? This online world is bigger than I ever imagined.
Chairman Landon, that's all I really have, but I definitely stand for any questions.
What is I've just got a 30,000-foot question. What kind of activity do we have going on in Wyoming on online wagering? Do you have that in front of you?
I
How
can
many
get
of these bets are placed every day? What kind of a handle are we looking at?
I can get you the most recent ones. It might take me just 1 second, but
Thank you. Yeah, take your time and find it. I think it's a lot more than people realize, at least.
Mr. Chairman, I can
Go
answer
ahead.
that question. I looked at it
Senator Hicks.
yesterday. Last year, it was $1.88 billion in online sports wagering within the state of Wyoming.
1.88 billion. Does that jive
that would be
with what-
total, yeah, and that would be total wagers amount, so that's not, there's back and forth. And also with online sports wagering, free bets and bonuses, you see the commercials all the time that says bet 5, get 250. So they're gonna report $255 and it was $5 is what you paid, but it's $255 is what their books are showing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the director? Okay, thank you. Appreciate you, Director. And anyone else want to come forward and testify on House Bill 299? We're talking online sports wagering amendments specifically for the reservation. Good morning. Travis, how are you? Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Travis McNevin here on behalf of the Northern Apple Business Council. Will offer just a couple of brief remarks, and if the committee has, some technical questions from previous, from jurisdictional issues or something that was brought up, Ms. Claire Johnson of the Northern Arapahoe, who does in-house legal work, is online and available for any clarifications or questions there that the committee may have. So on behalf of the Northern Arapahoe, again, fully support the bill and fully support the amendment that was brought to your committee today. While the jurisdictional issues can be, somewhat complicated, this bill is actually quite simple and straightforward. As was previously noted, to ensure that viable, good actors in the sports betting space were in state law. They required them to be in 3 jurisdictions, which inadvertently, boxed out the tribes. And so what this legislation before you today does is expand or add the tribes to that for the operator and the vendor. The amendment also before you eliminates, as Representative Larson said, the geofencing language that was brought from the House, because at this point, it's just not needed. The Wyoming Gaming Commission has good language and a good grasp of the geofencing issue, as the Exhibit A that was placed up here on the desk shows. And so at the end of the day, with the bill and with the amendment, what we would be doing is basically correcting or eliminating that box out of the 3 jurisdictions for the tribes as an operator and a vendor. And that's what at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here today. And that would allow them to offer sports betting outside of the reservation boundaries under the state rules, regulations, Wyoming Gaming Commission authority, fees, the 10% to the state, et cetera, just like any other current operator is now in the state. And so with that, certainly take any questions, Mr. Chairman, or like I say, Ms. Claire Johnson is also online if there are some questions there.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an observation by me, I guess. It seems as though the online sports wagering is kind of a young person's deal. You go to the casinos and, whether you're on the reservation or someplace outside of state, it seems like it's the older generation. But it seems like the young folks that are the ones that are really into this. Am I kind of hitting the mark on that, or what do you see in this vein?
Mr. McNiven,
Mr. Chairman.
being a young whippersnapper like you might.
Well, I
it's
do
right in your
appreciate being
wheelhouse.
called young. My daughter may disagree. But Senator Schuler, I don't know the breakdown of demographics. When you go to, I would agree that when you go to a traditional, a casino establishment, here out of state, the age seems to be higher. I don't know, if that's because they have the time or the resources to maybe taking the trip, but, I don't know. But I do know that online sports wagering is very popular across, a number of different age categories. There is the convenience factor of it. And the popularity of just sports and sports wagering in general.
Any other questions for Mr. McNiven? Thank you, Travis. Appreciate you being here. We will certainly allow Ms. Johnson to jump on there, and if we may not have any questions, she's welcome to testify, and we'll get to her in just a moment. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else want to testify this morning on 299 on the online wagering? Sue, maybe Ms. Johnson is out there and would like to say a few words on behalf of the tribe. We'd sure welcome her. Ms. Johnson, good morning. All right, if you would unmute for us, we can't hear you and still muted, by golly. That's okay. We've got a minute. Let's just try to get you on here. We just can't hear you, Ms. Johnson, and we'd love to get your comments on the bill this morning. Are we okay on this end? Yeah. Ms. Johnson, how about if you stand by and we'll come back to you in just a moment. We've got someone else, I think, out there who wants to testify, or?
Mr. Chairman, she's the only one for this
She's,
bill.
oh, okay. Try it one more time, Ms. Johnson. We'd love to hear your comments. Can you unmute your computer? And turn your volume up for us, maybe? I bet that's it. We still can't get you, Claire, sorry about that. We've heard good stuff from Mr. McNiven and Representative Posey. I think we're good to go, and I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get your comments this morning. Thanks for the work you do, and we will move on, okay? Thank you very much. Committee, that's, I'll close testimony on this bill. What's your pleasure? House Bill 299.
Move the bill.
Moved by Senator Schuler. Discussion. We have a proposed amendment. Would someone like to move that?
I'll move the amendment.
Okay, moved by Senator Hicks. And that is the proposed amendment that, does everyone have a copy of that in there? Okay, any questions, any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of Senator Hicks's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That motion has passed. The amendment is on the bill. Anything else on the bill? Okay, Sue, would you take roll on House Bill 299, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 299 engrossed as amended. Senator Boner?
Aye.
Senator Hicks?
No.
Senator Jones?
Aye.
Senator Schuler?
Aye.
Chairman Landon?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, House Bill 299, Representative Posey will go to the floor of the Senate, and we'll do our best up there to represent the bill that you brought. Director, thank you for being here. We appreciate you guys, and Representative Posey, have a great day. All righty, thank you very much. Okay, the next bill for our consideration, Committee House Bill 307 engrossed. About the top number of the heap, 307. Poll watchers, polling station observation. Brought to us this morning by Representative Pendergraft.
Mr. Chairman, I've always had an affinity for those three numbers, 307.
Well, it is kind of a magic number.
Just strikes home to me, you
Yeah,
know?
there you go. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I had to wait for 2 weeks to get this bill numbered, so
yeah. So,
sitting there waiting.
Representative Pendergraph, good morning. Please walk us into and out of House Bill 307.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. It's good to be here. My favorite House rep, U.S. House Representative, likes to say sunlight is the best disinfectant. And it's in that spirit that this bill is brought to you. Poll watchers, as we know, play a crucial role in ensuring election integrity by monitoring the voting process for fairness, transparency, and compliance with election laws. They help detect and report irregularities, prevent misconduct, and provide documentation in case of disputes. Their presence increases the public trust in elections, and I think that's critical. This bill increases the rights or responsibilities, however you choose to look at it, of poll watchers in various aspects, and I'd like to highlight the most important ones here. Currently, poll watchers are only allowed to observe the voting process while the polls are open. This bill clarifies that poll watchers are allowed to observe all aspects of an election, including the opening of polling places and the closing of polling places, tabulation of ballots. The bill also clarifies that poll watchers have the right to observe the early person voting process. Again, the idea is that the transparency helps quell rumors and frustrations from folks. The bill is actually fairly straightforward. It has some kind of interesting little things in it because the use of poll watchers has not been even across the state. They're all supposed to do it about the same, but it's been a little different. Some places scarcely have them, others are very avid about it. And then the treatment of poll watchers has varied from place to place. So this tries to just tie that together and make that neat. On page 2, there's a little change to the definition there on line 9. Just says now we're having them watch the vote counting, so we're expanding the responsibilities. And you flip over to page 3, line 9, after all votes are cast and the polls are officially declared closed, only election judges, and we add and poll watchers shall be permitted. So we're just kind of opening up the spaces. Similar language below. Over on page 4, I presume all of you have read this and are familiar with it. I'm going to keep moving if that's all right. If we have questions, we can go back to that. Where they emphasize the top of page 5, every aspect of the election, a poll watcher shall have the authority to be located close enough to hear and to see the voters. They check with election judges. We've had stories about poll watchers being told, basically, you go sit over there on that bench in the corner, and they really can't even see what's going on. So we want to make sure that as long as they're there, they're actually doing the job that they've been called to do. Poll watcher shall not be prevented from observing all activities and processes at the polling places. Looking for, on page 6, lines 15 through 17, this one sounds kind of silly perhaps, and yet it actually comes from experience. Poll watchers shall be provided chairs at the polling places. And then it was added, poll watchers shall not be restricted to a chair. So from those comments, and these come directly from experiences of poll watchers, you can kind of tell a little bit of the frustration that had been out there. F there, the county clerk may require poll watchers to wear identification badges. There was quite a bit of talk about that. And as you see it edited here is how it came out of the House. Gives the opportunity to pick up the identification badges so that poll watchers can easily be identified. There was some back and forth about, do we just need a, hello, my name is tag, or, and the House position was that they wanted some uniformity, and so you can see that spelled out there. Secretary of State shall have the authority to promulgate rules to ensure that poll watchers may carry out their responsibilities under this section. One part that apparently I missed on there is an obligation of county chairman, if you have somebody on the ballot, you need to provide poll watchers and to make sure that that happens. And then if you do not have a candidate on that ballot, you still have the option to provide poll watchers. Just trying to encourage as much participation and transparency as possible. So with that, I'm standing ready for questions.
Questions of the sponsor? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I guess my first question would be, you mentioned there've been some issues in some different counties. It appears as though what we're doing here is not only making sure that we certify those poll watchers, but we provide them the opportunity to be a little bit more involved, particularly at the start and at the end. And in the past, they have not been allowed to do that. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, there have been issues in various places. There have been, for example, county chairmen who just simply chose not to appoint anybody to go. And that kind of causes some frustration at times. And so this is mainly about uniformity and as much transparency as possible, and try to get everybody on the same page and quell the frustration. You know, a lot of the issues are probably baseless, but if you're not there watching, how do you know?
You have a follow-up too?
Yeah, go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up, when the county chairman of, each political party, let's say they have a candidate, how do they certify those poll watchers? What do they do to certify them? Just out of curiosity.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schuler, I honestly can't answer that specifically. It is spelled out in the statutes that are here, but I did not go through and try to, not a county chairman yet.
Thanks.
Any other questions, committee? Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, do you know of any other bills that we have out there that say that we have to provide chairs for people? It seems like a really odd thing to have in here. I know you gave an explanation, but I'm just wondering if there's other instances of us doing this.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Jones, when I first saw the bill, this was given to me, presented to me, as, would you be interested in this? And I kind of raised my eyebrows at that. But apparently there have been some incidences where poll watchers were taken to the position, yes, you can watch, but you'll have to stand over there. And there was no provision made for them to at least be comfortable. And we're talking about, as you well know, all day long. And just to try to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore and that they're provided for, given a certain sense of comfort and belonging. So we put that in there.
Senator Bonner.
Follow up on that. You think it'd take care of the problem if you simply say they may provide their own chairs? I mean.
That's what I was thinking.
So
I
yeah,
thought,
just
just bring a
it's just a
camp
question.
chair.
I understand the problem and I think it's real, but adding this, I mean, it doesn't, it's a passive tense, doesn't even say who's going to provide the chairs, so.
We'll take that up. Thank you, Representative. Any other questions of the representative? Okay, Representative Pendergraft, we'll let you sit back for a minute, and we want to get to some other folks, including that Secretary of State. And Mr. Rubino, we've had a lot of quality time together here lately. Yeah. And now we jump to another committee to have some quality time. Yeah. Morning, Secretary. Take it away.
Thank you,
Tell us
Mr.
about
Chairman.
this bill.
I'm Chuck Gray, the Wyoming Secretary of State. To my left is Joe Rubino, our counsel and our policy director. I stand in support of House Bill 307. What a wonderful number. Huge fan of that. And poll watchers play a crucial role in ensuring election integrity by monitoring the voting process for fairness, transparency, and compliance with election laws. They help detect and report irregularities, prevent misconduct, and provide documentation in case of disputes. Their presence increases public trust in elections. This bill increases the rights of poll watchers in various aspects, and I would like to highlight some of the key provisions in the bill here. And keep in mind that a lot of this is in response to the lifting of the very troubling consent decree that stopped the Republican Party from poll watching up to the 2020 election. That was in place for over 3 decades. And since then, I think the party has really taken poll watching, true to form, and is really building a good infrastructure on that. But there have been issues, and we're kind of internally named this sort of the Poll Watchers Bill of Rights. And it's just kind of addressing some issues that over the 3 decades really weren't clarified in statute and that have come up. The number one reform, though, in this bill is allowing poll watchers to observe all aspects of an election. Previously, poll watchers are only allowed to observe the voting process while polls are open. This bill clarifies that poll watchers are allowed to observe all aspects of an election, including the opening of polling places, the closing of polling places, and tabulation of ballots. The bill also clarifies that poll watchers have the right to observe the early in-person voting process. This is an area where Wyoming, compared to other states, is particularly weak in not allowing poll watching once the polls close, and then also for the observing of absentee counting, tabulation, and early voting. And this has been a major dispute. It's an area where Wyoming's quite weak. And I think while there are a lot of other stuff in the bill, it is probably the central piece of it. It also clarifies the time period for providing poll watchers. And I know there's a lot of interest from political parties on this, in terms of the chair situation. I mean, you can imagine, I know Senator Boner alluded to this, you're there all day and you don't have a place to sit. So it is an issue, and this is a dispute that between the counties and the parties that our office has been involved in, and I do think we need to resolve it in some way. At the very least, clarifying that they can be brought in, that there's not an issue with that's not disruptive, but would prefer if they're provided because maybe they forget or something like that. Then this badge issue, the stinking badges. This has been a challenge where the individuals, poll watchers, haven't been able to procure the badges exactly that the clerks want. This just puts a procedure in place so we can just have a procedure and make sure that everyone's able to poll watch, and that procedure's in statute. There's a lot of great things in this bill for reforms. I think I went through most of them. And I know there's a lot of interest from the political parties on this and people with a lot of experience with poll watching. Ms. Halverson, I think, is online, and she has a lot of experience on this, and I think has some clarifying amendments that were emailed out, and I look forward to hearing from her. Very supportive of this bill. There's a lot here we got to clarify, and I think it's very strong, and look forward to the comment as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. Any questions for the Secretary? Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. And it's just, I have no idea if this is allowed or not, but the last election, I noticed the poll watchers were chit-chatting with the people when they were coming in and registering. I didn't think anything of it, but I mean, it talks a little bit about in here, that it's a disturbing issue. I didn't consider it that. Are they allowed to talk? Are they allowed to interact with the public when folks are checking in? Or can they just sit there and be quiet? I have no idea. That must be my first question.
Mr. Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator. I think the party, and I think Ms. Halverson can speak a little bit to this on the Republican side, has discouraged them from doing so. I think as long as it's not disruptive, that's where the statute says individuals can be removed for being disruptive. I don't think it really currently contemplates explicitly, talking to somebody, but it does contemplate the sort of disruptive factor, and that has been sort of adjudicated on the ground within the counties. Thank you.
A follow-up?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then the other question I had was, so many people voted absentee early this year. Do they allow poll watchers there as well? Or I have no idea, just a question that
What
I
is,
thought about.
Secretary, what does that piece look like, that early voting?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rubino, but again, one of the aspects of this is that it clarifies that the poll watchers are allowed in all respects. And that's an area where, again, Wyoming's quite weak. You look at our rankings, not that rankings are everything, but it's one area where we really get dinged from an election integrity perspective, is that we aren't in alignment with most other states on allowing poll watching in all aspects of the election. But I'll turn over Mr. Rubino on the nitty gritty, on the statutes and the rules on where we're at on poll watching.
So I had the same question as Senator Schuler, so I'm interested, Mr. Rubino.
And of course, with your
and what
indulgence.
that would look like. Several hundred people vote early in my neck of the woods, hundreds. So how does that look? How do you watch that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, currently, this is one of the things that House Bill 307 does aim to provide clarity on. Currently, the Secretary of State's rules, and I don't have my rules in front of me. I had them texted, but I'm off of a blurry picture, so I can't quote them verbatim, and I'm happy to provide them to you. Our rules do provide for poll watching during absentee voting periods. That's not currently really in statute. The big thing with this is on election day, which we do have a sizable majority, is not just when the polls are open, but before and after. And so I know that there are different practices in different counties about how they handle schedules for absentee polling place poll watchers. And I think that you've got testimony online for that. I think this does provide statutory clarity on that is allowed under statute.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions? Senator Jones?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, at the very end of the bill, it says that it gives you the authority to promulgate rules to ensure the poll watchers can carry out their responsibilities. I'm just wondering if you could give us some examples of what that could include.
Mr. Secretary?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Jones, for that question. I think in terms of the parameters of the process of obtaining the badges, for example, I mean, rules fill in the statute. And, as you can, from your earlier question, there's a hesitancy, and I understand that, to put the chairs in statute. Well, that's the kind of nitty-gritty thing that rules typically fill in. But we're leaning towards putting a lot of this in statute, but even how does somebody bring in a chair? How do they notify and not be disruptive in that way? How are the badges picked up? What are the times on the badges? That's the kind of thing, the submitting of names for poll watching around the edges. That's been a huge dispute in our rules on the absentee voting. Albany County maybe missed a deadline on one of their, as Mr. Rubino alluded to, in the rules, it is allowed for early voting. There was a deadline that they didn't quite hit. And then the question became, are they not allowed to poll watch at all for the entire period? Or is there a lockout period? And that's where the rules kind of fill in those situations. So the bill, it still has some questions, and this stuff does get pretty nitty gritty on timing with the clerks and when things are submitted and how they're submitted and, who signs and things like that.
Okay. Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so let's go over to page 5, line 17, and I think this brings in a whole new concept with the new language, and so a little rationale behind what, so it's the new language: a state or county chairman may designate another certified poll watcher. So the very nature of our elections are local. Precinct, committee chairman, county chairman, all of these things, but now we're allowing a state chairman of a party to designate somebody in the case there's a removal of a poll watcher. I'd like a little discussion on what that expands the duty of the state chairman to designate somebody to be a poll watcher at a local race. And so just a little explanation for the need of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hicks, appreciate that question. I do think Ms. Halverson has a little bit of experience on this that she's going to allude to in her testimony, and I think her amendment contemplates an expansion of this across the bill. You know, the issue that I've observed that I think the language on page 5 is trying to address is that some county chairmen have not been as quick in designating poll watchers. In some cases have declined entirely to designate poll watchers or election judges. And the state party wants to engage in this. And whether it's a time issue, and I think that's why it's on page 5, is because this is a snap thing that needs to happen. When somebody says, I can't do it, we need a replacement, maybe even within the same day. And so that's why I think it came in on page 5. I think the party wants to expand it across, more across the bill. But the challenge has been that some counties, you know, I think sometimes it's a timing issue, especially that's why it's on page 5. And I think there have been some counties that, for whatever reason, and sometimes maybe it's just they don't want to, have decided to totally decline to do this, and the state party wants to do this. And I think that's part of the issue we're grappling with. We have it on election judges as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm
Go
just
ahead,
cognizant that we don't write bills for one party. And so we write bills for elections. And so it concerns me, you know, that we're just talking about one party here when we write, these are for, and I understand these are partisan poll watchers. I understand that. But the explanation was is one party wants this. I want to reject that notion that we're writing statutes for one party. The other side is those local chairmen are elected at the local level. And now we're saying, you know, we're going to set aside those local decisions and insert a decision from the state chairman. I don't care what party it's from, third parties, minority parties, or whatever. It looks like it's a little bit paternalistic that if those locally elected officials that come up through those precincts and those county committees don't want to do something, we're saying now we're going to interject and say, no, we're going to let the state party decide. And that bothers me a little bit. So again, just expressing my concerns, if you'd like to address that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and
Go
I,
ahead, Secretary.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with your indulgence, I know the representative and Mr. Rubino want to weigh in, but I'd like to get a first crack at it. Appreciate what you're saying, Senator Hicks. I will say, though, that the majority party in this state, the Republican Party, was under a consent decree for over 3 decades. And so it is the majority party, and once that consent decree went away, they've been quite active in the space, and it has presented a lot of new challenges that the state, in terms of the statute, has fallen behind on. The Democrat Party has had, you know, some organizational challenges. Many counties didn't even submit their county reports, and the state party had to step in to submit their county reports at the Democrat Party level, and that was a call that we engaged with a discussion, quite a colloquy with the state party on how those county reports will be submitted when the county reports are defunct. And so we have this issue with the Democrat Party in a little bit of a different form, but they candidly have not been as active statewide on this front. I'm not saying they haven't been, but I think there's a number of factors that played a role in this, and certainly my office is open for any feedback from either party, from any party or unaffiliated on this bill or anything. And so I would add that on the Democrat Party side, we've had a challenge on the opposite end, which is even submission of finance reports at the county level has been challenging. So I'm not sure there's been as much poll watching on the other side, but this is really addressing issues across the board that have been seen, not just in our office, but at the county level, in places like Albany County that have come up since the consent decree was lifted. I know there are a couple others want to weigh in with your indulgence.
Sure. Representative, you've been wanting to make a comment. Let's go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just kind of touching off of what the Secretary said, there's only one major party that has 23 different counties represented. And so if there's a requirement that they have poll watchers, if there's somebody on the ballot, somebody has to certify those. And so for all the other parties, if they don't have a county chair, the state can then take that place and make sure somebody's there.
Mr. Rubino, did you have anything on this front? Senator Schuler, and then we'll come back to Senator Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess this question is for any one of the three of you. I'm just assuming that you've had some conversations with the county clerks. How do they feel about this bill? Any pushback from them, or are they on board with it, or what have you heard?
Secretary, do you want that one? Or do you sponsor one of
Well,
the two of you? Mr. Rubino might be the guy to take it.
Well, I think they're here. I'm hesitant, Mr. Chairman, to speak for them. I think they did have a couple amendments on the House side, but go ahead if you want to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's like any other group, there were some people were very supportive. It's about time. Others were, why are we doing this?
Okay, thank you. Anything, Senator Hicks, I think you had another thought or question.
Mr. Chairman, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. We're going to get to our county clerks here. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. Ms. Langford, good morning. We spent a lot of quality time yesterday, and we get to start the day off right this way. Yeah, today. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor to represent the county clerks of the state of Wyoming. And there may be a couple of clerks that would want to join us online. Particularly, I think Julie Freese from Fremont County is available, as well as Karen Rimmer. And I don't know, there may be others, I'm not sure, but I know those two for sure.
Okay, thank you for that heads up.
I will kind of kick it off, and then we can hand off to them, I believe, to fill in the holes.
Sure.
I'd like it to be noted for the record that all county clerks believe poll watchers are an important piece of ensuring election integrity. Poll watchers participated in Wyoming's elections in 2022 and 24 in many, but not all, Wyoming counties. The greatest concern I think that we have here is the fact that security is a huge issue with this bill. If a poll watcher's duties are to observe voter turnout, voter registration, and vote counting, then what are their duties before polls open and after they close? None of these activities occur during those times. The election judges are individuals who are nominated by the parties, have sworn an oath, are trained, and are often involved in parties and other community actions and are performing these critical tasks. That's election judges. Election judges have the duty to challenge electors whenever existence of legal grounds for doing so is known or apparent to the judges. Poll watchers are electors, not election officials, and have no duty to report, do not swear an oath, and they represent political parties. A couple of the other things that are in here that are interesting is we had a discussion about badges. The clerks feel that badges are critical for transparency as well as security. It isn't really clear in the bill who's providing the badges. It sounds kind of like the clerks are, and then it sounds like maybe not. There's some clarification that needs to happen there with the badges. And the badges would be provided to the parties, which are private entities. There would be an issue with the funding of those kinds of things. The suggested language in the bill concerning the badges, it tells what the size of the badge is. It needs to not be a politically motivated type of a badge. It would make sense probably that those be generated by the clerk or the clerk's offices for everyone. Then that rolls back to another question is certification. The bill contemplates that the chairman of the local parties will certify poll watchers to the clerks. Those are to be certified before early voting starts because they are welcome at early voting and have been used at early voting. Like I said, not everybody had poll watchers over the last 2 elections, but there are some that were early voting and had poll watchers there every day, and that's an 8 to 5 day. So they were participating during that time. But that certification now is given before early voting starts, as well as it's supposed to be before the polls open on election day. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not enough time. It's fine on the front end of that, but the clerks need to know at least a week ahead of when the election is, who those poll watchers are going to be, because we have the badge issue that we need to resolve to make sure that they're credentialed. But the other part is that we also have security concerns. And security is kind of on the backside of the election situation over the past few years, but security is part of making sure that the election continues to have integrity. But we also want to know who is in our polling place and make sure that they're allowed to be there and they're certified to be there by their party. That certification also, I think, arrives to the clerks electronically. But it would make sense, that some sort of an amendment to deal with that in here. As I said, it's before the polls open. You don't have time the day before, you need time for that. And we understand, we go through the same situations with election judges. We appoint a fleet of election judges and train them and get them ready, and then things come up. There's illness, there's, different things that do come up. So a lot of times you're scrambling to get election judges who are the official people to be in the polling places. So those two kinds of things, we just need more time as far as that's concerned. And then I want to talk about the chairs also.
Well, you might have to gather up some chairs.
Let me tell you about chairs. Let me tell you the real story about chairs. Providing chairs for poll watchers adds an administrative and financial burden due to the number of chairs that we would potentially have to provide. Now, let me give you an example. Fremont County has 32 precincts and 8 vote centers. And I don't know if you know what a vote center is. A vote center is where all of the precincts are in one place, okay? So 32 precincts can vote at the same place. It's like at a high school or someplace like that, okay? Then the parties are allowed to have 2 poll watchers, each major party. Okay, you can see how this is going, right? So we're gonna go 32 times 8 times 2 to the grand total of 512 potential chairs for Fremont County. Laramie County is even bigger than that. Again, private entities can't be funded with public dollars. That's another thing. A lot of this equipment is rented from tables and chairs, those kinds of things. A lot of the equipment in smaller places may be owned by the counties, or it's borrowed from, if you go to a school, sometimes they have appropriate chairs and tables. Tables are important because they have to be ADA compliant. So that's, they've got to be the right size and that kind of thing. So a lot of times clerks will have their own tables. Because if you go into a small community center someplace, they may not have those kinds of things available, and you don't want to get involved in an ADA complaint because the table, they can't roll a wheelchair under a table, for instance. One of the things that's involved with that. So counties either rent facilities which include tables or chairs, or they provide them on their own. It would be reasonable that the parties could make arrangements for those. Yeah, nobody wants anybody to have to stand up all day, but also polling places can be very small. It can be an issue to sit 2 people down. There needs, and I know that also in the last elections, the judges and the clerks provided even tables and chairs for people, just making those arrangements with each other and try to work through that. But it might be a situation, if you're in a big place, you need to be talking to facilities about a place for your poll watchers to sit. So the cost of the chairs and tables and just the mechanics of all of that to get those in place because election polling places are already set up with equipment, with tables for judges, with booths. There's a lot of other equipment. You have to set up a special spot for your touchscreen equipment for your express vote. It has to have a special area and has to be accessible. They have to provide handicapped accessibility to all of this equipment, so you have to have a larger place in some situations. So anyway, those kinds of things, but the cost and the mechanics of the chairs, maybe that's something that should be discussed in rules as opposed to in statute. I already talked to you about early voting. Yes, poll watchers are welcome at early voting, and have been in the past. Again, poll watchers don't need to be present before the polls open or after the voters have cast their ballots. They're watching them cast their ballot all day long as they put their ballot into the tabulator. The defined roles of the poll watchers don't include that. Of course, that 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning hour can be chaotic in a polling place. Your people are arriving, the people being the election judges, they're getting set up for the day. They're setting up their polling place as far as the flow of the traffic and those kinds of things, and they're busy doing that. That's what's going on between 6 and 7 in the morning. Yeah, there's tapes that are run on the equipment, but that's all that's going on with that. The clerks need to have the list of the poll watchers, well ahead of the election day, and I've told you that before. They need to have badges, and I noted that on page 6, I believe, of the bill. On page 9, or on line 19, it says the county clerk may require poll watchers. Then it goes down a little further on on line 23, and it says the county clerk shall require poll watchers. Those should both be shalls. It might make sense also that poll watchers, and I don't know if this is part of their training or of their policy, that they would swear an oath also to be a poll watcher in the polls. Like I said, election judges are trained and swear an oath to do their duties. And Mr. Chairman, I believe that's all that I have to provide. Like I said, I'd like to hand off to my friends that are online if I could.
We'll go to them in just a moment. Committee, I want to do a little housekeeping real quickly. I'm going to jump in here. We are not going to get to House Bill 280. That's becoming very clear. So if anybody's waiting online or is in the back, I don't see anybody who I think is here for House Bill 280, but that's the sex offender registration bill. We will not get to that one today. We're going to be trying to finish this one up. So Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said you don't think submitting names by the day before was enough time. How much time would be enough in your view?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boner, I thought a little bit about Friday before, but it might make more sense that it be a week before the election.
Okay. Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, election judges, how are they vetted?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator
Ms. Langford.
Jones, election judges, the county clerks notify the party, and it's statutory, they notify the parties that they will need a slate of election judges for the upcoming election season. And I can't recall how far out that is. It's like about April
I
of
was gonna
election
say
year.
May, I think.
April, yeah. And that list of folks are submitted to the county clerk, and then the judges are selected from that list by the clerk, and then they're appointed. And after they're appointed, then they're trained, and usually the training is late July, early August for the primary season. And then they also are retrained again for the general election, so like in October. They will be, but they're selected by the parties. The folks are selected by the parties. And then the county clerk also has the ability is that, again, things happen, maybe those folks aren't able to. So sometimes you're out beating the bushes looking for Democrat judges, Republican judges. You're supposed to have a equal amount if you can, if it's possible.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up.
So follow up, Senator Jones, go ahead, and then we'll get down to Senator Schuler and Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm just trying to get the poll watchers thing in my head right, but do you think there's any, I know you talked about maybe training or a little bit, do you think that would be valuable so that our poll watchers do know, what they're looking for and, what the actual process is? Is there any value to that?
Go ahead.
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Langford.
Senator Jones, one thing is that our election judge training is open to the public. That would be one place where they could come and see what that part of the piece is. I know that the Republican Party has a pretty active training program for poll watchers. There would be a possibility, I think, maybe to blend some of that together or work together or whatever. At this time, that hasn't really happened much. But as this evolves, maybe that would make sense.
Before we go down here, Mr. Chairman, I didn't realize, I'd forgotten that was your bill, number 3, and we're just going to run out of time by the time we get this one taken care of, so we do have a Thursday morning meeting, so yeah, we do, and we'll carry that over. So, Mr. Chairman, sorry we're running out of time, but this is a big one too. So anyway, let's go to Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Langford, just looking again on page 6, on the issue with the chairs, if we made that language more permissive and say that poll watchers may be provided chairs at the polling places or could provide their own, is that something that would be reasonable, or, I don't know?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, I think that would be a reasonable compromise. I know, in my experience, my judges didn't like the chairs that we brought them. And a lot of times they came with, like a camp chair or something like that. They brought their own chair. Or they brought, I had a lady one time that brought her Lazy Boy recliner in because she'd had some surgery. That's war stories, sorry, but yeah.
If you're going to be a bear, you might as well be a Grizz. I mean, bring a big chair. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Langford, a question, you've talked about the difficulty and sometimes just getting poll watchers there. By moving that date back a week or so earlier, does that even restrict your ability even more to get poll watchers in place?
Ms. Langford, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, as far as the clerk is concerned with the poll watchers, that's really the party chair's responsibility to get those folks there and get them situated. We would want to know so that we can get them a name tag, get the security piece done, to have time to do that. But if we had enough, that's my greatest concern, is that we have enough time to get them secured and know that they're going to be there and that type of thing, where if you call on Monday afternoon, that's going to be a scramble.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Langford, it would be helpful to me. We've been wading through on the Corporations Committee these bills for the past, several weeks here, it feels like. Lots of them. We've talked about canvassing boards, we've talked about election judges, and now we're talking about poll watchers. Can you help the committee understand the interaction of those three and what the duties are of those three? In my mind, we're getting a lot of people involved around election headquarters here, and I just want to understand how they all interact. Can you help us with that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So election takes a lot of people. There's a lot of volunteers that work through the election process. So to start with the election judges, for instance, those are the folks that are actually in the polls, that when you go in to vote, they check your registration, they give you your ballot, they make sure your ballot goes to the tabulator, and they give you a I voted sticker, and out the door you go. Those folks receive training as I said, before each of the elections, specific for that training or for that election season. A little bit different for the primary as it is for the general. But they get, they get that training. Those folks, as I said, are recommended by their parties, and then they're selected to work. They work election day. They work that long 14-hour day. And a lot of those folks have been doing that for a lifetime. It's a very prideful thing to be an election judge, we find in a lot of our places, and especially our small precincts. It's a big deal to be the election judges. So that's kind of that. The Canvas Board, a different board of folks, and we've talked about them. Currently, the way that is, the Canvas Board is 3 members. It's the county clerk, it's a representative of the 2 major parties, so a representative from the Republicans as well as a representative from the Democrats. There's 3. Those folks are in charge of looking at the unofficial results. So after the election, this is after Tuesday, they look at the unofficial results. They go through the write-ins that are submitted during the election, and they offer those nominations or elections to those. They determine that. They meet in public. They also deal with any kind of irregularities, or if there's anything that is, has happened with the election, they deal with those things. They also sometimes participate in the post-election audit. And then all of their work, they certify the county election to the state Canvas Board. And then the state Canvas Board, of course, is the top 4, and they certify the state to the feds. So that's that. There was one other thing. Okay, we talked Canvas. Oh, poll watchers. Poll watchers are selected by the parties, and then they have their training that's provided by the parties, and then are available to be at the polls now during the hours that the polls are open. So from 7 to 7 is when they're allowed to be in the polls. And in olden times, another war story, in olden times, poll watchers, their purpose is that they go and see if their voters, their party voters were voting. And if they weren't, then they take off and go hustle up and go to the coffee shop or whatever and gather those people up and say, hey, get to the polls, or give them rides. That's the old history of poll watchers. They got the vote out is what they were doing, as they were getting the vote out. Sure. So, and that's part of the thing with the statute here, where it says that, they can watch what's going on. They should be watching to make sure their people are voting. So.
Well, I think that is the primary interest here. But, so when I read this bill last night, Ms. Langford, I actually did react to numbers and physical spaces, because you pass legislation like this, and we have to be concerned, I think, with boots on the ground and how's that going to work at these polling places. In Natrona County, a lot like Fremont County, you're talking about hundreds of people. I just I don't know that that's a question, but I did appreciate you bringing that up, because I think it is an issue and a concern to me, is how are we going to work all this? I assume that any poll watcher then would be able to stand behind that canvassing board at any point in time or at any meeting. Maybe we have to provide chairs there too. I'm just trying to work it all out in my mind, how this is going to play out, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to appreciate the volume, a lot of before the primary, or before the general election this year, because that was a big turnout election, there were reports of people in counties, different counties, Park County, Teton County, voting 300-400 people early absentee every day. Yeah. That's a lot of people, and those early voting situations are usually located in a courthouse someplace, maybe the commissioner's room, somewhere where they're in a fairly small space, and that's a lot of people going through the system. But they're with the popularity of early voting, it's becoming more of a something that people enjoy doing.
Ms.
It's
Langford,
space.
this is anecdotal, but just to put in with you, and like I said, we've spent a lot of time on elections during this session. I do believe, and I've had anecdotally constituents tell me that they don't want to go to the polling place anymore. That's why absentee voting is exploding. Up around, I think it was just over 1,400 votes in Natrona County were absentee. It's a lot of them, early voting. And it is because some are just uncomfortable going to the polling place anymore. So, any further questions for the clerks? We better keep marching on to try to get through this bill, committee. Thank you, Mary, appreciate
Mr.
it.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity.
Let's go to further testimony. Ms. Russell, you want to come up and testify this morning? Before we go, and then we will go to, I think we have a couple of clerks. Ms. Halverson is out there. Probably a couple more. So we'll have to clip through this as best we can. Good morning, Ms. Russell.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senators. Speaking on behalf, Kathy Russell, Executive Director for the Wyoming Republican Party. Thank you.
Thank you.
The party definitely stands in support of this bill, and as has already been pointed out to you, in the 35 years where we were under an injunction from about 1983 to 2018, during those 35 years, there was a greater emphasis overall within elections of convenience, and a lot changed in that time. We went from a mostly paper ballot to a lot of electronic components in voting, and absentee voting expanded from the military primarily and people who were overseas to include others for the sake of convenience. Now we're at the point where we need to backtrack after that injunction was lifted and start adding the detail back in, and that's where we are. I have served as an electing judge. I've been a county chairman. I've been a county vice chairman. I've gone through the trainings with the counties and with our state. We have a very robust training program for poll watchers. And so there's a lot of those questions you have asked that I could address. One of the things is to get back the idea of a teamwork in assuring the integrity and security of our elections. Honestly, as an election judge, I served here in Laramie County for the primary and the general 2 times, and finding chairs wasn't necessarily an issue, but certainly in other areas where it is, I don't think anybody would have a problem with bringing a chair. What has happened in other areas, and I don't know anything about here in Wyoming, but it was used as a discouragement for people because, for example, when I was selected to be the observer for the tabulation of the absentee ballots here, and I was there from 7:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night. And to be there without a chair would have been impossible. And so some of the experience, some of what I will reveal is from personal experience. You were addressing the timeline for notification of the county chairman of the needs for election judges and to sit on boards and judge positions and observers. That has happened in the past in mid-April. The chairman would have that list back by mid-May. That's actually in the Secretary of State's very detailed election calendar. We just issued, as a state party, we just issued a calendar putting out all of our meetings and our big events, and those 2 dates were projected to fall mid-May and mid-April and mid-May in 2026, if it follows the pattern of the last 2 elections. So there's plenty of time ahead of the primary to get those things done and to get the people trained. I did participate in the training that was offered in Laramie County, both the pre-primary and the pre-general, and those were very helpful. Beyond that, I was provided with a booklet that the people, when I worked as an observer at the tabulation of the absentee ballots, I was provided with a booklet that the workers were provided with. And so, for instance, I knew what they were supposed to be doing because we were looking at the same book. There's lots of moving parts. I was the only observer, And so it was tough to observe everything, but still it was great. And I was able to provide feedback to the judge or to the county clerk and her deputy. And it was a two-way street. We were working as a team. Hey, I saw this, what's happening with that? And they were great about welcoming me in and seeing me as part of the team. I think that's definitely a great step forward. In terms of the badges, they're like $2 and it was provided to me and the swearing in. So we are in favor of this. It allows continuity to have election judges at every aspect, allows a better understanding of the whole process and provides teamwork. Given that we have political party nomination of candidates through the primary ballot, it's very important to the political parties to have observation of the elections because we have our candidates being selected that way. So we stand in favor of this, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
So, Ms. Russell, real quickly, I do want to, and then we'll move on quickly. You've got colleagues who want to testify this morning.
Sure.
We're running out of time. But the state-county piece, you've been involved a long time with our party and at the county level. I just am sitting here thinking if a county chairman cannot or chooses not to appoint someone, are you comfortable with somebody from somewhere else rolling in over the top of Laramie County, for example, and saying, well, we're gonna pick that individual?
Mr. Chairman.
For some reason, the county party maybe didn't want that individual. How do you feel about that? That's what this language says, though.
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. In reality, sometimes we have new chairmen and they're not sure what to do. They missed the deadline or not sure what to do. The state party has access to people within that county who are interested, have taken the training, and they may or may not be hooked up with the county party. They may or may not be a member of the county party central committee, but we're aware of them because they have come to us and said, hey, we really want to be trained. I really want to participate as an election judge. And we have that kind of thing happen pretty frequently, that I want to be a volunteer to do X and so, and they're very interested in that. We would know that, and so we could help, speaking of we, the state party on that level could help say, hey, have you reached out to this person? And in some cases, the clerk, the chairman have not, they just don't want to participate. There's been a couple of those. But it's important for those people in that county to have participation at the elections. So that's a perspective on that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Russell. Appreciate it. Let's go. Anyone else in the room? I don't see anybody. Sue, let's go to, I want to go to Ms. Freeze first because she's been patient with us. And she was good enough to be willing to testify this morning. Then we'll try to get to Ms. Halverson, and then committee, we're going to quit for the morning. And we're going to have to carry this one over, Representative. We're not going to get all the way through it. Welcome to corporations. That's been our life, Senator Boner, right?
I'm just waiting for her to join.
Okay, thank you. We'll give her a minute longer, but then we want to get to Ms. Halverson. Let's go to Ms. Halverson. We don't have much time left, so. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Halverson, I'm just going to mention to you, we've got a shortened time period, so if you could visit with us real quickly, it's good to see you. Take it away.
Thank you. My name is Marty Halverson. I am the co-chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party Election Integrity and Security Committee. But today I am speaking for all political parties in Wyoming and their rights to observe all election-related processes, and procedures in the name of election security. I have trained over 500 Republican poll watchers since we have been poll watching in 2020. There's been testimony that we started in 2022, but it was actually the general election of 2020. As it was a matter of fact, it was those 2020 efforts that got us invited to a meeting of the County Clerks Association of Wyoming in April of 21. I want to answer some of the questions that were brought up, Mr. Chairman, through you. Senator Schuler, no, we have not been able to observe the opening of the polls or the closing of the polls. And when we are prohibited from observing any aspect of an election, there are people that ask, what do you have to hide? So we ask that you let us in at 6 a.m. for polling location setup and stay until after the polls close and the machines are opened up, locked up, and tapes are spit out. In my training, and it's a 2-hour training, and it is open to clerks, it's open to election judges. Ms. Langford had a really good idea about getting poll watchers invited to election judge training, and this is something we've been advocating for years, but to date, as far as I know, only one county has invited poll watchers to attend the election judge training. In my training, I tell people, bring your own chairs, have a camp chair in the trunk. And this is not a petty issue, Mr. Chairman. This is an example of what we are up against. As recently as the last November 5th election, one of our poll watchers walked into her polling location and was told by the election judge, the law says I do not have to provide you with a chair, so I'm not going to provide you with a chair.
Ms.
When-
Halverson, I'm going to interrupt real quickly because we're quickly running out of time. You did have a suggested amendment. Do you want to touch on the amendment real quickly so that we can understand where you were going with that one?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have several suggested amendments, and I sent you all a copy of them. Page 2, line 8, after county, insert state. There are minor parties and even a major party that do not have a chairman in every county. This change would allow the state party chairman to deploy poll watchers throughout the state. Oh, my cat. These parties should not be penalized because they might lack a county organization with a chairman. Page 3, after line 1, after the, insert rights and. State law confers the right to poll watchers in addition to enumerating poll watcher responsibilities, and our rights to observe elections needs to be emphasized.
So, Ms. Halverson, I'll ask for any overall comments real quickly. We are at 10 minutes till and we're due upstairs. You know how that goes. You've
I
done,
do.
so maybe an overall comment or two, and unfortunately, we'll have to cut it a little bit short. We're going to carry this over to Thursday morning, however, and I will grant you a minute to visit with us then if you have a couple of comments we couldn't get to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I really, really appreciate it. Big picture, bottom line. Voters love poll watchers. Everywhere we serve, we get thumbs up, we get thank yous. They are trained to be flies on a wall. They watch, they observe, That is it. And we are, I don't want to say fighting back, we're pushing back against some of the resistance that we've encountered over the last 5 elections to our presence at the polls. That's the big picture, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your consideration and your indulgence, and I will see you Thursday morning.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Halverson. Appreciate it. Let's go quickly to Julie Freeze from Fremont County. And she may have a couple of words, and then we're going to get upstairs. We'll have to carry this over, committee. That's how these election bills have been going. Good morning, Clerk Freeze. Sorry we had a little glitch there and couldn't get you on earlier, but we're short on time. I wanted to get to you. Ms. Freeze, take it away and any comments you have on the bill this morning.
And I'll make them brief. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for hearing this bill this morning. So Mary has really given you a great information about all the stuff that we had on our list. A couple things that aren't on there that I do want to share. We have worked hard. There's a lot of clerks, and I can't say for all of them, but I know we are really into uniformity. We update it every year. This is one I believe that we will absolutely be working on. We already have rules in place, so I think it's something we can work on for everybody to see if we can come up with ways to work through this. Security is a big deal. You know, if we screw things up, the fingers are pointed at us all the time. If you haven't seen that through the session, then you're not watching. We feel, or I feel personally, we're under scrutiny all the time, like we can't do anything right. So our judges feel that way. So I've had from our judges, they feel like they're doing something wrong and they don't like being watched because they feel like that they're writing notes and then they scurry off and call on the phone. We've had voters call and ask why other people are watching them check in. I mean, just think about where you check in and pretend there are however many people behind that line of people watching. That's all personal information, by the way. So our judges have to take an oath that they are going to be impartial and that they are not going to share any of that information. We're not going to be giving an oath to the poll watchers. So whether they get an oath or not, but they cannot release any of that information, but I don't know that they do. So if you have a whole bunch of people, that is concerning. As an election official, I constantly state that I want to know if something is going on at the polls. And there was an election in 2022 where there was some information going on at one of my vote centers. I got a complaint filed with the Secretary of State. I did get a copy of it after the fact, but if they had called me, if the poll watchers had called me and said, I question this, I have a problem with this, I could have fixed that at that particular moment. But because they're trained to contact their poll or their political committee, they're in the local or the state level, that doesn't help us. I think we're working for all the people of Wyoming. We just want to make sure they get in, they can vote. The Constitution makes it compulsory that we make sure that their voting is confidential. That's why we retain them at the polling area. So where you check in is kind of where we have them. We don't have them roaming out on the floor because they might be watching how people are voting, which is against the rules. I let them at certain times when there's nobody at the machines, I allow them to go to the machine judge and check and see how many voters are there. And I think we work really well with them. I think what we're hearing is, the question was at the very beginning, has anybody contacted the clerks to see how we feel about this? Any of you that have worked with us on a bill prior to the session, I think you will find that it'll go through the session a lot better because we will give you our honest feedback and we will try not to be obstructionistic. I think we will be telling you what we feel is necessary to make that work or not work, or can we administer it? So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will just stop there and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Freeze. Any questions for our Fremont County Clerk? Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Julie, for that. But my question is based on what you just said, do you have a position on the bill? It seems like you're opposed to the bill. And so what is your position?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks. So as the Clerks Association, which is how I signed up, we just are giving information. I believe personally, this is me personally now saying, I believe that we could take the rules and we could work with what we've heard in this session. And I think we could work with the parties and the Secretary of State, and we can come up with the things that maybe aren't working. I do agree personally that I don't think this bill is necessary at this point. I think we can work on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeze. Ms. Freeze, thank you. We're going to move on and I don't think we have anyone else online, Sue, right? Committee, I'm sorry we couldn't get through this one. These are tough ones. There's a lot of passion. A lot of people want to testify on these, and you just have to work your way through them. We're going to carry this one over to Thursday morning, and then we will have the other bill from Representative Knapp. His bill will be up, and perhaps maybe one more.